Hello and welcome to another episode of ISO 400. I am your host, Julius Motal. In this episode, I'll be talking with Eric Kim. For some, he needs no introduction. For others, he is an international street photographer and educator who was one of the forerunners in creating an online community for street photographers. He's known for the Eric Kim Street Photography blog, which has been a tremendous resource for anyone looking to get started in the craft. In this episode, we'll be hearing from him about his story, his photography, thoughts on what it means to be a street photographer, and much more. So, we hope you enjoy this episode of ISO 400. As always, our music is provided by Yuki Futami, and if you like what we do, please share this with your friends and hit subscribe down below. Thank you. Welcome to the fourth episode of ISO 400. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
My greatest pleasure. Let me ask, why is it called ISO 400? Is it all for like film shooters or something like that?
Nah, Chris and I were workshopping names, and this was simple. It was easy for my purposes. It's usually my go-to ISO, both when I started shooting film and now when I'm doing digital too. And it's easy to remember. It rolls off the tongue easily. ISO 400 or ISO 400, depending on how you say it.
Yeah, for the international crowd.
Yeah. So thank you again. I know 10 hours is a bit of a difficult time difference to navigate.
Yeah.
But thanks for making the time.
Yeah.
So, Eric Kim, you've been photographing for about 9 years now?
Something around that.
8-9 years.
Yeah.
Street photography educator. You've got a well-known and well-regarded blog. You started in 2010. I had found your first Hello World post.
Yeah, no, I remember going back to that. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I actually wrote a Hello World.
No, and I think it was good too because it kind of laid the foundation with very simple goals, which I think you've kept to over the course of. And I've been reading it. I've been a reader for a while now.
Oh, sweet. That means a lot to me. Thanks a lot, Julius.
So, I want to start with your workshops. When did you first feel qualified to start teaching workshops, both in California and then internationally?
So funny story, Julius. The first workshop I actually taught was in Beirut, Lebanon, and I think this was maybe about a year into my blog, and I think I did a blog post titled like 100 Things I Learned About Street Photography. Went viral on the internet, and there was this photography director for this local photography group in Lebanon. Her name was Lauren, and she sends me an email and says, "Oh, Eric, we really like your blog. We'd love to bring you over to Beirut to teach a street photography workshop." And when she first said that to me, I was like, can you even teach a street photography workshop? The thought totally didn't even cross my mind. And to be honest with you, I didn't think I was quote quote qualified to teach a street photography workshop, in the sense that I've never taught a street photography workshop, nor did I ever hear of anyone else teaching a quote quote street photography workshop. But I think I was qualified in the sense that I've always had a passion for teaching ever since I was in high school. Did a lot of tutoring classes, and also when I was studying at UCLA, I actually studied some honors pedagogy classes, like how to be a good instructor and teacher. In my senior year, I actually taught a course titled "The Sociology of Facebook and Online Social Networks," and it was cool. It was a 1-unit seminar, and I was a senior. And it's a special program where I was able to create a syllabus, assign readings, assignments, and I think teaching runs in my blood. And before I started doing this full time, I actually wanted to be a sociology professor. So in that sense, yeah, it was a great experience. Went to Beirut for the first time, did a workshop there, did a workshop in Brighton, the UK, like half a year afterwards. And then after about a full year of working at my old job, I got made redundant. And then I'm like, okay, I have this blog. I want to try to figure out if I could make this a living. And my partner Cindy was very supportive, my parent. And I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm gonna make a living. Let's see if I could do some workshops, if I could sell T-shirts or advertising. I don't know. And it was crazy. The day I got laid off, I got like over 100 comments on my blog, which is crazy. And this was about 4 years ago, and my blog wasn't even that big. So the amount of support and love that I got helped me do what I do now. And And I think it's been about 4 years now where I've been teaching workshops full time. It's about like 90% of my income. So
Yeah. And how did you develop your style as an instructor? I imagine there's been a learning curve as you've been teaching. So how did you do that?
I think that's a great question, Julius. So I think first of all, I just really like people.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, some people have called me extroverted, and I'd have to definitely agree. I'm the type of person that when I'm around other people and interacting with them, I get a lot of energy,
Yeah.
as we are doing right now.
Yeah.
And I would say the the basis in terms of my teaching philosophy is what I actually learned at UCLA.
Hmm.
So we weren't called teachers, we were called student facilitators. And I actually quite prefer the term facilitator over teacher because I think when you call someone a teacher, you kind of assume that that person's smarter than you. It's
Sure.
like on a higher level than you, and it's kind of like putting all this knowledge and shoving inside your brain. It's like, okay, I need to educate you because this is like the key to knowledge. Whereas I think a facilitator, on the other hand, is somebody who knows that the knowledge is already inside the student's head. And
Hmm.
my job as a facilitator is that I'm just holding a key and I'm just trying to unlock that part of your mind,
Hmm.
which could really unleash your potential. And so one of the big things I've learned is spend about 80% time letting the students talk and
Hmm.
only 20% of the time me talking, because I think the more you talk as an instructor, you don't give the students the ability to engage. And I think engagement is one of the key words when it comes to instructing.
Hmm.
That's also one of the strategies I try to use on social media. I try to be as engaging as I can. Like, I'm not, lately I haven't been so good at it, but I try my best to,
Yeah.
reply to people's comments and get people excited, ask people a lot of questions. And so it's kind of like it's almost like student self-led education and discovery, and I'm just kind of like a guide, I would
Hmm.
say.
So beyond what teaching has, like over the course of a couple of years, has taught you about how to be this facilitator, what have your students sort of unlocked for you about your photography? Because
So what have the students unlocked about their photography or my photography?
yours, like, what have you learned about
Oh,
yourself as a photographer through these workshops?
um, yeah, so that's another great question, Julius. I think one thing that I've learned actually about my photography and teaching is one of my good friends. His name is Charlie Kirk. He
I
maybe
know him.
about 2 years ago. Oh
Yeah,
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 have you met him in Istanbul?
yeah, a couple of times now.
Okay, yeah, cool guy. And he posed me the question that, okay, Eric, you're traveling, you're teaching workshops, but at the
Hmm.
same time, if you want to be a really, really good photographer, you can't put your eggs in two different baskets. You had to really focus on the teaching or the photography. What's it going to be?
Hmm.
And it was a very good question because I never really considered it before. Because I do believe in life that you could have your cake and eat it too. So why
Sure.
can't I be a great photographer and a great instructor? But
Yeah.
I think really for me at the end of the day, I think my life's purpose is teaching and
Hmm.
not so much to be the world's best photographer. I mean, even when it comes to street photography, I have confidence in my own photography and
Yeah.
I like my own work, but I certainly know I'm not the best street photographer out there, nor
Hmm.
do I claim to be. But I really want to be a world-class instructor. So
Hmm.
I think at the moment, honestly, I'm dedicating about 80% of my efforts in terms of education and only 20% of my photography. And so I think as a result, my photography is, of course, kind of languished. But over the years, I think I've been able to amass some pretty decent images. And funny enough, a lot of these photos I've taken have
Hmm.
been during workshops that I've taught, or during workshops allowed me to travel to go to other places
Hmm.
and teach. And I think, yeah, ultimately another thing I learned too is I don't like to shoot by myself. I
Hmm.
prefer to be shooting around other people because for me being an extrovert, it helps me stay motivated and helps energize me. And I think at the end of the day, for me, photography is less about image making, but it's
Hmm.
more about the experience of being on the streets, interacting with people, interacting with strangers. It's a social thing for me as well. Like
Sure.
I've met so many great friends through photography, and it's a way for me to stay grounded and connected with the rest of the world.
Hmm. Let's, if you don't mind going back to the beginning. You're 18. You've got a
Mhm.
camera.
Mhm.
How did that all start? And how did you find street photography specifically?
Yeah, so I was 18 years old. I just graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I was always interested in was photography because my sister was actually, she's 2 years younger than me. When
Mm-hmm.
she was like 9 years old, got really into photography. My mom took a lot of photos growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather and my uncles were all really into photography. And so my mom gives me a little Canon point and shoot. It was like a SD 600 or something.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first got it, it had an LCD screen. This is like when digital
Yeah. Yeah.
was still pretty new. So it's like, oh, this is sweet. I could take a photo, and I had to wait till the lab to get the back. So I think early on, that instant feedback was something that I really got addicted to. And these are pre-Instagram days, right? This is
Oh yeah.
like 2000. What is this? 2006?
Mm.
No, wait, 2000. No, no, no. Wait. I. What was 2000? Yeah, was this? Yeah, 2006. I think that's when I graduated high school. And yeah, so I mean, digital technology still
Yeah.
wasn't that good. But I remember the first month, I took like literally 1,000 photos a day. Like I took photos of everything, like my shoes, my food. Like this is
Yeah.
before like it was okay to take photos of your food. Like I take photos of my food, and people are like, "Why taking photos of your food? That's crazy!" And now
Yeah.
everyone does it on their Instagram, and I just really loved to take photos. And
Mm-hmm.
I went to college and I started also taking a lot of photos. And I experimented with everything. Shot like like macros. I shot like
Mm-hmm.
landscapes. I shot all the I did selective color with the flowers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I went on the internet, and you see all. Then I start. This is when photo blogs first
Mm-hmm.
started coming out. You see
Yeah.
all the super shallow depth of field photos. You're like, oh, what is that?
Yeah.
It's like, how do
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get that? Do some more googling. Oh, it's called bokeh. You need a DSLR. Oh, what's that? Look into it. The first camera I got was the Canon Rebel XT.
Mm-hmm.
Get it with the kit lens, and I'm trying to shoot with it. I'm like, how come I can't get the bokeh? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, you need a prime lens, so I get the 50 mil 1.8.
Yeah.
And so I got really into that. But after about a year or two of photography, and I think a lot of other photographers reach this point where you're like, what kind of photography really turns me on, and what am I really passionate about, and what do I want to dedicate myself to? And so for me, I just really sat down, and I realized I really like taking photos of people.
Yeah.
And more than on one instance, I like to take photos of candidly of people without them noticing, whether they be of my friends, my family, or just random strangers on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't really know what street photography was.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a bunch of Googling, trying to figure out more about street photography, and I discovered, there was this huge genre of street photography that really excited me. But at the time, there were no blogs on how to shoot street photography, something more educational and instructional. And I'm like, that sucks. Someone should start a blog on this.
Yeah. And it
And
was
then
you.
Cindy was like,
Yeah.
"Why don't you start the blog?" And I'm like, "But I don't know anything." She's like, "Just treat it like a learning experience, like a
Mm-hmm.
journey, and just have people go along this journey with you." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." And it's nice because it took a lot of pressure off me in the sense that it wasn't me saying, "Okay, I know everything about street
Yeah.
photography. Let me educate you guys on how to shoot." It's more like, "Okay, I'm still learning about street photography.
Mm-hmm.
I might learn some things that you guys also might be interested. So let me just be open and share it." And yeah, and that's kind of been the journey ever since.
Yeah, and I've been combing through old posts today to try and get a sense of things, and I came across one. You had taken a trip through Europe several years ago, and you had
Yeah.
said that you had at the end of the trip 40,000 photos to go through, which
Yeah.
to me is just an insane amount.
Yeah,
How did
pretty
you
good.
learn? How did you learn to slow down?
So yeah, at the time I had a Canon 5D, and I just loved clicking photos. It's just
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But at a certain point, um, when you start seeing the same photo over and over, and then
Mm-hmm.
your body starts to naturally build a filter in terms of what's interesting to you. A huge part of slowing down for me was starting to shoot film,
Mm.
and what film really did for me was it gives me the chance to really think, is this scene really so important of me that I'm willing to take a photo of it? Because every time you click the shutter, that's like 25 cents or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So every time before I'm about to click, I I think it makes me appreciate things more. And
Mm-hmm.
also it's taught me that like I don't have to take a photo of everything. Like, for example, I went to Vietnamese New Year's with Cindy, and you saw fireworks, and we
Mm-hmm.
experienced like the lion dancing and stuff like that. And I think an Eric in the past would phone out, taking all these
Yeah,
photos and
yeah.
stuff like that. But now I just kind of learned how to just appreciate the moment. And also, I read the study. There's some sort of psychological study about a year ago that came out in which if you take a photo of something, you're actually less likely to remember it.
Yeah, I read that
The
one
reason,
too. Yeah.
yeah, like the idea is, you offload your memory facilities
Yep.
to your phone, and because you know it's going to be on your phone. But honestly, how often do you ever go back to these phone photos and look at your old photos? Like you never do. I mean, at least I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so shooting film now, I've definitely slowed down because when I shoot digital in a day,
Hmm.
it's easy for me to take like 500-600 photos, but on
Yeah.
film, if I shoot like a whole roll, like 36 images, or even two
Hmm.
rolls of film, like 72 images, that's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, I might take like 10, 12 photos a day, and it's the only things that I find like really, really interesting to me.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the challenges that at least I've experienced with street photography is learning when to not take the image.
Mm.
How did you learn to stop? Like, there are moments where you realize there's an image, but it's the better route is to not make it. And how did you learn that?
Um, Yeah, generally, I think that's a good question. That's a good point because I think photography is all about knowing what not to photograph because if
Mm.
you photograph everything, there'd be like you'd have no filters, so there'd be like a high noise to signal ratio, and
Mm.
you're not finding anything interesting. And I do believe in photography and street photography, kind of a subtractive approach that
Yeah.
photography is more about subtraction than addition, trying to
Mm.
simplify the scene, especially in street photography where everything's
Sure.
so messy. Generally, things I try not to photograph are like homeless
Hmm.
people and people who look like they might have some sort of mental disabilities.
Yeah.
I was wondering if Cindy was leaving, but
That's
then
okay.
so people who are homeless or mental disabilities. So I generally shy away from that.
Hmm.
But there's still cases where I'll talk to some people on the streets who might look homeless or
Hmm.
mentally disturbed, but and have a good conversation with them and actually just shoot their portrait at the end
Hmm.
or scenes where for example, I think there's this one photo I took in Mumbai in India
Hmm.
where it's like homeless guy and then there's like a Rolls Royce Phantom just like passing by with like skyscrapers in the background. So that's less about like, hey, here's a homeless person, let's let's get really close to him and HDR him and make it look like an
Yeah.
interesting photo. But it's more like trying to make some sort of social commentary about like the
Hmm.
haves versus the have-nots. But I don't know. Still, at the end of the day, I think my personal philosophy is, I think there's in street photography. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this. Is
Hmm.
paralysis by analysis? Is that
Yeah.
sometimes when you're thinking too much, should I shoot the shot? Should I not
Yeah.
shoot the shot? You don't shoot the shot, and then you go home, and then you're about to go to sleep, and you're lying in bed, and you're thinking about the
Yeah.
days photos. You're like, ah, damn it, I should have taken that photo. So now, what I try to do is whenever I see a scene that I might find even mildly interesting, I'll try to take the shot.
Hmm.
And I think that, and this is something I learned from Jeff Bezos from Amazon. He calls it the regret minimization framework,
Mm.
in the sense that you want to live life without regret. So just kind of going for the shot. Because you could, at the end of the day, you could always edit it out later,
Sure.
meaning you could decide whether to show it or not to shoot it. But if you have the photo in the first place, I think it gives you more options.
Yeah. And with regards to simplification and subtraction,
Yeah.
in a recent interview that I listened to, you were talking about your Suits project,
Yeah.
and that you've only got about 25 or so photos up of that
Yeah.
project out of thousands.
Yeah.
How did you learn to edit in sequence? How did you learn to cut your own stuff down? That's something I struggle with constantly. And
Yeah.
how do you do it?
I mean, it's really hard because whenever we make photos, they're like our babies, right? Like they're like
Oh
our
yeah.
children. They all look so beautiful, and you're like, I want to keep all of you guys. You guys are all so wonderful. I'm gonna upload all you guys to Flickr and Facebook and share you guys with the world. But I mean, this is also another thing that I really have to thank Charlie Kirk, because I mean, I would say
Hmm.
in my street photography journey, he's been my best, one of my best friends and also one of my mentors as well. But he really taught me the importance of editing and less
Hmm.
is more. And I mean, part of it also is, I don't know about you, but it kind of annoys me when people always upload too many photos and they have a very
Yeah.
sloppy feed. Because,
Hmm.
like, like you know, I've done interviews with other photographers, and you know, they send me a link to their Flickr, and then I have to scroll like
Yeah.
30 minutes to find their gems, and I'm like, why
Yeah.
can't you just make it easier and just put all your best work in the front? And so, you know, it's kind of like treating other people how you would like to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the lessons I've learned that was actually quite amazing to me was Gary Winogrand,
Mm.
how apparently he would wait at least a year before developing
Right.
any of his films,
Yeah.
and that would really let him you know, disconnect himself emotionally. And I think one of the quotes that he had was, "Sometimes photographers mistake the emotion of when they make the photo of whether it's a good photo or not," meaning,
Mm.
you know, like I'm sure you had that, right? Like it's, you know, you're in Istanbul and
Oh
it's
yeah.
like there's like a you know, beautiful like
Mm.
rainbow, double rainbow sunset. There's a little girl with an umbrella. You take a photo, like that's
Yeah.
the best photo I've ever taken. And then you know you talk with the little girl and you find out her backstory. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, she's got such a good story. Then you rush home, download the photo to Lightroom, post process and upload to Flickr.
Yeah.
And then you think it's like the best photo you've taken. I'm gonna just hit explore, get 1,000 likes, whatever.
Yeah.
And then like you get like 5 or 10. You're like,
Right.
dude,
What?
you
Yeah.
no taste. What
Yeah.
is this? Like, and then like 2 weeks later, you look at the photo and you're like, oh, this isn't as good as I remembered it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the biggest thing is letting time sit. So for my Suits project, you know, I have a rule is that before I upload the photos for those projects, I generally try to wait at least a year from the time from I shot it and time until I upload it. And recently, I actually just dropped off like 164 rolls of color film Kodak Portra 400
I
to
saw that.
Costco.
I saw that shot. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that photo is the most likes I've ever gotten on Instagram, which is quite exciting. Um, but yeah, like that is about a year's worth of shooting that
Wow.
is over the last like 9, 10 months. And they said it's going to take another 12 months, not 12 months, 2 months to get it processed and developed. And
Jesus.
so I think my hope is by the time I look at the photos, I forgotten taking most of them.
Mm.
So when I'm judging them and editing them, I could really be very critical, and it's almost like I'm judging someone else's photos because it's
Mm.
always easy to edit other people's photos
Oh
because you're
yeah.
not emotionally attached to them.
Mhm.
So I think having a year worth of the time in between, and then this is another thing that's helped me about film is that I have no discipline at all when it comes to these kind of things. But
Yeah.
film, it's like it's an artificial constraint that you just can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but for people who shoot digital, my simple suggestion is, you know, sure, download the photos to your computer, but try to let them sit for at least a week. I think preferably a month if people have the ability, and before uploading images too, like put them on your iPad, make small 4x6 prints, and share them with your friends or people you trust, and have them be brutally honest and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, look, help me kill my babies." That's all I say, kill my babies. And when they bring out the hatchet and start axing my babies, it's so painful because
Yeah.
like feels like it's part of me, but at the same time, it's really refreshing, and you know
Yeah.
that putting good work out there is, I think, and being a good editor is so difficult now, and the
Yeah.
world is saturated with images. What is it like? I think the statistic is last year there are
Mm.
more photos uploaded to the internet than the history of photography combined. Just
Jesus.
that's just last year.
Yeah.
So if you just think of exponential curve, it's
Oh yeah.
like,
It's
so I'm
it's
like, do I
huge.
want to add to this glut of images of just
Yeah.
like crap, or do I want to make a few decent images that could inspire and
Yeah.
help people out, I guess.
Let's switch for a moment to your Only in America project.
Yes.
It feels like a nod to Robert Frank.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, where did you get the idea? What is it you're trying to show through this project?
Yeah, I mean, certainly Robert Frank, as much most of the other street photographers have been a huge influence for, you
Hmm.
know, most everyone I know that
Yeah.
personally. Um, I think for me, when I first saw the project, I didn't really get it. I'm like, okay, black and white photos, America, whatever, right?
Mm.
But the more I started looking about it and studying it, really what it taught me is, um, I think when I started street photography, it's all about like making good single images that would get lots of likes on Flickr and so
Definitely. Yeah.
forth. But now I'm trying to create more of a sense of feeling, and I want to say, and I think with my street photography, what I'm trying to do is, if I would describe myself, I wouldn't really call myself a street photographer,
Mm.
but I'd call myself a sociologist with a camera.
Mm. Hmm.
And I see the camera as like my research tool, and through my images, I'm trying to make social commentary. And my Only in America project is probably going to be my culmination of my feelings about what I feel like America feels like to me. And I think I have a unique perspective in the sense that I'm an Asian American, born here, raised here, but I don't look white,
Yeah.
unless other people might not know. So it's like I'm an insider and an outsider at the same time. And whenever I travel, they're like, oh, where you from? Japan, Korea, China. I say I'm an American, and they're
Yeah.
like, what? You're an American?
Yeah.
And even in high school and middle school, I was a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout. So I'm like, yeah, America. So I actually do have a lot of pride of being an American. I mean, if it wasn't for Boy Scouts and a lot of the great leaders I had, I kind of grew up without a father figure, to be quite honest. So I kind of got that a lot through there. So I'm really grateful for all the Scout masters I've had.
Sure.
Not only that, but if it wasn't for the U.S. government, I wouldn't have gotten all these scholarships, loans, and grants to have gone to college, and all the social structures that have helped me get to where I am now. So I'm very grateful for America and all these other people to help me get to where I am. And also, I feel that just America just gives you the spirit of being open and free willing, gives you a lot of freedom, risk taking, and stuff like that. But at the same time, you look at America, you see all the social inequality, you see all this obsession people have about appearances. Like one photo I have my Only in America project is two images next to each other. There's one really obese black woman in downtown Los Angeles.
Yep.
Then there's one like anorexic. She just looks like she got a really bad fake tan. Two Red Bulls in her left hand or right hand, and a cigarette.
Yeah.
And she just like bright pink shirt, looks like she just had Adidas track jacket, just came from the gym.
Yeah.
And to me, it's not so much to like make fun of them, like saying, "Oh, these are horrible people," but the sad thing is obesity generally affects people of color,
Yeah.
and I think that's more of a social economic thing. It's like what's cheaper to buy, like $1 hamburger or like a $10 quinoa salad at Whole Foods, or in this feeling like in LA where I lived for several years. Is this need to keep up your appearances, this need to always be out there and to be living this kind of like Hollywood lifestyle. Also, I lived in Michigan for quite a while, and I'd go to Detroit quite often, and it's one of the most socially or socioeconomically depressed places in America. And and you see so many lottery signs, so many tickets selling this kind of make money quickly, and it's sad because these companies are trying to prey on poor people, and myself included. I kind of grew up in a lower socioeconomic status, so at the end of every month, I didn't know if I would become homeless because my mom was just paying the bills month to month.
Yeah.
And so ultimately through the project, I mean it's an ongoing project. I've worked on it for about like 2 years now, and hopefully, maybe in about 5 years or so, I could publish a book that could really show my personal view of America, like all the beautiful things about it. I mean, I think that's what it doesn't include enough of, like happy things, because there's a lot of things I like about America.
Oh, yeah.
But the series, if I look at it, it's pretty depressing. And the irony is that, oh, you're such a friendly person, Eric, blah, blah, but your photos are so goddamn depressing. And maybe this is like, to me, to psychoanalyze myself, I'm an optimist at heart, but I still have that inner critic and social critique from studying sociology.
Yeah. And when you're out photographing for yourself, and you've got like these two projects in your head, you've got Suits and you've got Only in America, do you, whatever you find, you shoot and you decide later which project it fits into, or do you shoot, like you do go out saying, I'm shooting for Only in America today? Like, how do you switch between the two?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think it's hard to juggle multiple projects at once because I do believe that focusing on one thing or another is probably better. Generally, the way I do it is for my Suits project, and I think my Suits project is pretty much done. I think all the images I have left are probably gonna be in my last batches of film.
Right.
Generally, if I go to an area where there's a lot of guys in suits walking around, then I'll just go crazy and just go suit hunting, right?
Yeah.
So whenever I'm in New York or downtown in San Francisco or like when I was in Japan, that was like the
Oh, I'm
only
sure.
country in the world where people wear suits on the weekend.
Yeah.
So that's when I do that. But everything else, my Only in America series, I do a lot of traveling abroad,
Hmm.
but I think my best photography is actually, domestically in
Yeah.
America because, I'm an American and, you know, I feel that when I'm shooting here, I'm less of a tourist. I'm more of a person who is an American. I
Yeah.
think always photographing what you know is the best. So I'm trying to spend more time in the States and shoot more here.
Hmm.
And yeah, generally, I what I'll do is I'll do all the shooting, and I think about 80% of the project is in the editing phase because I'm gonna really sit down and then look at the images afterwards and see if this fits or it doesn't fit in.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that's essentially what I do. Yeah, when I'm shooting on the streets, I try not to think too much about it,
Hmm.
but so much of it is in the editing phase afterwards when
Yeah.
I'm culling down the images.
Yeah. And as far as like switching between things, you're both a workshop facilitator, instructor, and you're also a workshop participant. You've
Mm-mm.
been a student too.
Yes.
And what's the switch like for you? I imagine it's sort of it can be a different thing when you're not leading the workshop. So how do
Yeah.
you make the switch between the two?
Okay, so first of all, it was awesome. I recently did a Magnum workshop with David Allen Harvey and
Mm.
Konstantin Manos in Provincetown. And I was really lucky. I once again Cindy to the rescue. She
Yeah.
saw this the workshop for and they're offering scholarships to photographers under 30,
Hmm.
and and then I applied, totally didn't think that I would get it, and
Yeah.
I actually got a scholarship to attend one of these workshops, so I was super excited. And to be honest, yeah, it was very refreshing to be a student once again because you
Mm.
know always being an instructor, it's a lot of pressure and
Yeah.
and you're kind of always on, but I feel like as a student, you can kind of chill back a little bit more and kind of, in a sense, relax, but at the same time, also be active. I mean, it's tricky because I think at my heart, the teaching kind of goes to my blood. So,
Mm.
and Cindy sometimes critiques me about this, is that like sometimes when I'm around a group of people, I'll kind of go into what she calls Coco teacher mode, and I
Yeah.
start kind of lecturing and like just sharing my opinions, like
Yeah.
pretending like they're better than everyone else's. But I think it really taught me to be a lot more humble, and
Hmm.
also I learned a lot from their teaching styles as well.
Hmm.
But also part of it is knowing what it was kind of nice to it kind of reaffirmed my teaching style as well because I also there's certain things that, let's say, when they taught, I didn't like, and sometimes I think you could learn to be the best instructor by not doing what other instructors do, which you personally don't like. So,
Hmm.
for example, when you went to school, did you have that one teacher who would just talk for like 2 hours straight and just put you to sleep?
Yeah.
So, yeah, me too. So, I was like, okay, I don't want to be that professor. So, when I'm being a student, it helps me analyze myself from kind of a distance, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great experience to be. And I want to actually attend more Magnum workshops
Yeah.
or other master classes to
Yeah.
continue my life as well.
And with the blog and the way you've structured it, we've been on this journey with you, and we're learning as you learn.
Yeah.
We're kind of like students at the same time. What what do you feel you need to learn? Like, what are you working on? Like, what are things you feel you need to improve about yourself as a photographer primarily?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the last how do I say this? So it's the last few months have actually been really tough for me.
Hmm.
I I just my last big abroad trip abroad was in November. I was in Stockholm,
Hmm.
London, and Dubai. I was gone for about a month,
Mm.
and I've actually been back home for the last maybe 3 months. I haven't done any international travel since then. And so, in a sense, like when I'm back home, I'm Cindy's personal Uber driver. So, I'll take her to class.
Yeah.
I just cooked a really mean breakfast. I made some sausages, avocados, Brussels sprouts. And, I take out the trash and,
Yeah.
I go to Costco and I do all these things. And, it's been tough for me in the sense that I've actually been struggling a lot with inspiration myself. Is that like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I just like the last few months, I've just been feeling like super low energy and kind of uninspired. And I was just kind of thinking, it's like, what's changed? And I think a lot of it is because I'm so used to being on the road and meeting people,
Mm,
interacting and like
yeah.
instructing. And I think that's what really makes me feel really alive. But being back home, I, on one hand, it was really good because there was so many projects that I wanted to work on. Like, there were a bunch of, so generally the lectures I do during my workshops,
Hmm.
people don't really have access to that. So I'm like, why don't I just pre-record this so anyone could watch these? So
Hmm.
I was able to do that. There was a bunch of ebooks I wanted to write.
Yeah.
So after like about 30 espressos and time at home, I was able to
Yeah.
write those. And so, I accomplished all these things. And actually, I sat down one day and I was just like, shit, now what? And it was a little depressing because there were all these goals that I had set for myself.
Hmm.
And once I actually reached them, I was, I felt like I had no sense of purpose. Like, what's the next step forward? Like, I've already written so many things about street photography and distilled so much of my information. And I'm like, how do I keep pushing forward and staying inspired?
Yeah.
And there's actually this really inspirational thing my mom told me. My mom recently, she's 59,
Right.
you know,
She had
super
backpacked for
rad,
Nepal,
crazy.
right? Went
Yeah,
hiking.
okay. So
Yeah,
you read it.
I did.
So I'll retell the
Sure,
story.
sure, of course.
Thanks for reading that, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
But she's 59 years old. This middle-aged Korean woman. She went backpacking through Nepal for like 29 days, like freaking
That's
through Nepal,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Isn't that insane?
That is.
Yeah, like I've gone hiking with my mom once, or not once, like several times, and she could out hike me like no other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, mom, how did you have the motivation to keep doing it, and what did you learn? And what she told me was like, Eric, when you're in Nepal, you're super high climate, altitude. It's really hard to breathe. You're hungry, you're tired, you're
Mm,
cold the entire time. And if you look up to the peak of the mountain and you think to yourself, how can I ever possibly make it that high?
yeah.
You're gonna lose all motivation and you're gonna like die. Not just not die,
Yeah.
but like you're not gonna move forward. But she said the secret is just you look at your feet and you just think to yourself, one step forward, one step forward, one
Mm,
step forward. So you're just focusing on just putting one foot in front of the other. And so, I thought this was such an apt philosophy for life and photography.
mm,
The days I'm not feeling inspired with photography, I'm like, oh man, I have all these projects I want to work on. I haven't made any progress in my photography, and I become so like self-critical, and I start talking down on myself. Oh, your photography sucks. You'll never be a good photographer. Blah blah.
mm,
But now I'm thinking, oh, what if I just had the philosophy of just one more photo?
mm,
So by telling myself just one more photo, it makes it a lot more manageable. So, I'm out with Cindy. I'm like, oh, I'll just take one photo of Cindy. Click. Oh, just one more photo. Click. I'm out walking the street. Just one more photo. Click. And
mm,
I think over time, that's what will create a body of work. Similar to writing.
mm,
Um, I just try to tell myself, okay, I'll just write one more article, and just focusing on the small little incremental steps. Same thing with teaching. Every time I teach, I just try to do one extra thing that makes me a little bit better. And I think I read this in a business book. Is like the 1% principle. Is that
mm,
if you improve on anything 1% over day, in about 70 days, you'll double
mm,
your performance. So yeah, every day I just try to be 1% a better photographer, 1% make myself like a more
mm,
educated person and learn something a little bit new. And I think hopefully this is the way I'll stay inspired. But like I'm sure like lot of listeners out there and
mm,
you and
mm,
everyone else in the universe, yeah, I deal a lot with struggles of motivation and
mm,
and you mentioned the blog being this, we're all learning together. It's almost like my personal journal and diary of what's
mm.
going through my mind.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is just kind of a psychoanalysis of myself and kind of struggle problems that I'm struggling with as well.
Yeah. And this is kind of a good segue to my next question. When
Hmm.
you've in years previous, you've been on the road a lot, teaching workshops all over the
Hmm.
world. You're writing for the
Yeah.
blog. You're shooting for
Hmm.
yourself. I imagine it can get exhausting. Um,
Yeah.
how have you managed to keep things fresh for yourself?
Um, Keeping things fresh for myself. That's a good question. So doing a lot of traveling and
Mm,
teaching workshops and being to all these cool places, meeting new people. I'm so blessed to do it. I'm like
yeah.
so fortunate and I'm very happy to do so. But on the flip side, it is really physically, mentally, and also spiritually draining
Yeah.
because you feel like I think there's a saying, I think it was Seneca, a Roman philosopher, who said, if you're constantly traveling, you have a lot of acquaintances but no real friends. And I kind of felt like that for a long time. It made me kind of sad. So spending a lot of time at home has helped me reevaluate my life and, you know, how much traveling do I really want to do and what's really meaningful to me. But still, I do. It's kind of reaffirmed the fact that teaching is what makes me feel really alive. I mean, I think I enjoy writing, and I think I focus a lot on writing. But I think at the end of the day, people have told me this too. Like, I write the way I talk, which is often full of grammatical mistakes and stuff like that. But I think I need to spend more time teaching. And so I'm actually really looking forward to this Europe. This might have or might not have been a good idea, but I literally packed my schedule. Like, I have about like 7 workshops back to back to back to back to back.
Jesus.
And I think I gain energy from being around other people. And in terms of keeping my energy levels up, this is pretty bad, but I'm pretty much dependent on coffee. So I just drink loads of coffee.
I understand.
And when I can't sleep at night, I'll just take melatonin. But I'm actually trying to wean off slowly off of caffeine and other stimulants because I don't think that's good for my health. But it's wonderful because even though the content of the workshops is generally the same, the people I always meet are always different. The people, places I always go, they always change. And whenever I teach, I'm always a different person in the sense that I've learned new things, and I'm always trying to constantly revise workshops. So, for example, when I first started teaching workshops, we spent about 80% of the time in the classroom and me, essentially lecturing. And I think that was really boring in hindsight. And so now I put down on his head that you only spend 20% of the time, in the class, if not 10% on presentation lectures, and spending 80 to 90% of the time on the streets where I think the majority of learning happens. And also, I've learned so much about street photography, I think, over the years that, like, there's so many ideas in my mind that kind of come naturally. And so every workshop experience is kind of it's a constant evolution and constant work in progress. And I think this is where I'm actually quite proud of myself, is that I don't really even have to rely on slides anymore. Because I think, when you start off, you need slides to keep up your pace. But now I think I'm really good at keeping up my pace, knowing when to start, knowing when to stop, knowing when to change the schedule. And I think I'm pretty good at, like just kind of being quick on my feet. And just trying my best to be even more loving and empathetic to the students and giving them my full attention.
Yeah. Do you go in with a preset syllabus or workshops tailored to whatever the students want? How do you move from workshop to workshop?
So that's a great question. Generally, what I do is I have, on Google Forms, I have a sign up registration page. So, like, what do you want out of the workshop? What are your personal experiences? I try my best to study the students as best as I can before the workshop to learn about their history, and also really trying to focus on what they want out of the workshop. And so based on that, I'll tailor it. So let's say if 80% of the students are like, oh, I really, really want to learn more about composition, then I'll spend more time focusing on composition and giving them certain assignments on the street which are tailored to composition. But at the same time, I try to tailor it to each individual student because when I'm teaching a workshop, there's one-on-one time for me to shoot with a student one-on-one. So I'll say, hey, what do you want to work on? If they don't know what they want to work on, I'll just give them which I think will be good for them. If not, they'll say, oh, I still feel a little nervous approaching strangers. So I'll give them assignments in terms of overcoming their fears. So essentially, that's kind of the way that I try to give them that kind of help to
Definitely
help them become the best photographers they possibly can be.
Yeah. So what's next? Where do you see things going? Where do you want things to go?
Oh man, this is like the question of my life right now. This is like as I go through I just turned 27. Oh, I guess I'm still young. I just turned 27. But I guess I'm having my like existential quarter life crisis where I've had my blog for over 4 years now. I've written like over 1,000 blog posts on street photography. I've accomplished. This is kind of sad too. I've accomplished most of the goals I set in my life. Traveling. Meeting wonderful people, getting a Leica. Yeah. So I don't know, like, so part of me, I was feeling a bit depressed because I didn't know what was the next step for me. But I think this is me just like thinking really far ahead. but things I would like to achieve in my lifetime, or maybe over the next 10 years, is um, I want to publish more photography books.
Mm,
So, um, so right now I'm doing the ebooks because I don't have a support of a publisher or anything
right.
like that. But I'm actually kind of this is quite exciting news. I'm actually in the works of all my learn from the masters photos, like 10
Mm,
things photographer X has taught me about
yeah.
why.
Yeah.
I'm actually working with a publisher on actually making a printed book on
Oh, that's
that,
fantastic.
which which is really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
totally.
very excited about that, and I hope to do publish more books. I want to do more YouTube
Mm,
videos, like kind of lectures and presentations,
mm,
because at the end of the day, I'm not in this to like make boatloads of money and
yeah.
buy Leicas on Leicas. I think the purpose of my life is to dedicate my energy and efforts to help other people live happy lives as
Mm-hmm.
photographers and learn more. So do more of that. I want to do more charity work, so
Mm,
doing more charity based workshops. I've done a few. I did one in Detroit about a year or two ago, donating the funds to the Firemen's Foundation.
yeah.
Thinking about maybe ways I could teach more like teenagers and students and youth. Like
Mm,
I for a while I taught at a underprivileged school at with at-risk youth, and it helped empower them to
yeah.
get out of doing drugs and crime and stuff like that, which is good. Um, I would like to, and yeah, maybe one day I could be like a photography slash sociology slash philosophy professor or something like that.
Yeah.
One of the things, I studied sociology as an undergrad, but as of late, I'm getting like really into philosophy.
Mm,
So yeah, I would like to write more philosophical things, I suppose, and yeah, continue to be the best teacher I can. Also, one of these days, become a father, have a kid.
yeah.
Be. I want to be. My friend Ivan says, one of his goals in his life is to be a world class dad. So, I'd like to be a world class
Yeah.
parent and lover and son as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and actually, maybe the next step is kind of like you. I'd actually like to do more of these video interviews
Yeah.
with other street photographers. I'm lucky because I have access to so many great photographers
Yeah.
out there, and yeah, hopefully to spread the love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other genres of photography you find yourself attracted to, things you'd like to try out?
Actually, for a while, I was quite interested in maybe um, doing fashion photography because I
Mm,
actually really love fashion photography.
yeah.
I'm actually really a huge fan of Richard Avedon. I just love his portraits, and
Yeah.
he also did a lot of street photography and also quote quote street portraits in the past. Guy Bourdain is another fashion photographer I
Mm,
love. His use of color and the surrealism of his work. I actually want to study a little bit more about him. Admittedly, I don't think I am a very good fashion photographer, but I think one thing maybe moving forward, I'd like to focus more on portraiture
mm,
because even when I'm shooting street photography, nowadays I'm not that interested in like decisive moment type
mm,
street photography. I'm more interested in photographing,
yeah.
close up shots of people on the street. And I've always been fascinated in people and faces. So yeah, maybe a shift towards portraiture is maybe the next step for me.
Yeah. Speaking of decisive moment, I feel like most street photographers like have that phase. They learn the decisive moment. They've seen the work. How did you break out of that?
Um, yeah, the decisive moment. So first of all, learning that the decisive moment was a myth, in the sense that one book I recommend all your listeners buy is Magnum Contact Sheets,
Mm,
and it just kind of shows you the behind the scenes of all these great photos. And I always assumed Cartier-Bresson was like saw a good moment, one click, got the shot, like
right.
pixie dust. Poof, like this guy was amazing, but you kind of
Yeah.
find out that he worked the scene as much as any other photographer did out there,
Sure.
and so looking at and I still do look for decisive moments in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like I look for hand gestures, facial gestures,
Mm-hmm.
but I think my critique of Cartier-Bresson is that I think he focused too much on composition, geometry, forms, and stuff like that. And he was a painter by
Right.
his main interest was that, but a lot of his photos aren't as emotional.
Mm,
My favorite photos of him are actually his more emotional photo, like the two kid holding the two bottles of wine. Like
right.
that's a classic photo.
Yeah.
But I think my shift away from Cartier-Bresson's work was the fact that, yeah, like his photos weren't as emotional, and I think at the end of the day, I want my photos to be more emotional.
Mm,
And But still, I think, I still do gain a lot of inspiration from him. Probably one of the most articulate people I've read on his philosophies of
Yeah.
photography. And I mean, the reason why he's still around is, I mean, his photos were still damn good.
Yeah, of course. And how have you learned to? How did you first learn to like find emotion in your photographs?
Um, you know, I think it's nice, like reading all these articles on learning from the masters
Mm.
taught me so much, helped me get a deeper depth of photography in terms of what I like, what I didn't like.
Mm.
And I always kind of had an inkling towards it, but I kind of did realize that, yeah, what makes a memorable photo. And I think really at the end of the day, as human beings, emotion is what is the
Yeah.
strongest driver of any memory. I mean, sometimes I'll go to a place and I've been there with my ex-girlfriend from like 5 years ago, and
Right.
certain emotions will still kind of come up,
Yeah.
and I think what holds us together as a human beings as a society is our emotions. And even when I look at photos that like make my heart flutter
Mm.
and sort of evoke some sort of emotion out of me or reaction is what is personal and meaningful to me.
Hmm.
And I think once I don't know exactly when I had the aha moment that aha emotions are what I'm looking for,
Mm.
but I think a lot of it was like, for example, my suits project.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys look like I feel bad for them. I empathize for these guys.
Yeah.
They look so horrible and sad and lonely and depressed, exactly how I felt.
Hmm.
And I think that's what I'm trying to move forward in my photography.
Yeah. Definitely. So we're about coming up on an hour now. This has been the longest interview so far.
Oh, cool. Wait,
Um,
so who did you interview before?
Mark Hemmings. Um, uh, this is bad. We're only 4 episodes in. Mike Lerner, concert photographer. And oh, this is not good. I need to consult. I'm having a brain lapse. Nico Gooden,
Okay, cool.
a London-based street photographer.
Oh, nice.
So the thing I ask everyone with each interview, and in my text-based interviews too, you're all about giving advice and helping people learn and being educational. But if you could, you come across someone, they're just picking up a camera and they're thinking, I want to do street. I want to shoot street photography. What is the one thing you'd advise them?
Great question. So if I approach on this one thing, hmm. I would say if I could give, maybe if this is advice for myself and other street photographers, I would say talk with strangers.
Mm.
Um, the reason that, because I mean, there's so many things I could say, but the reason why I would say that'd be the biggest thing is that I think 99% of street photographers starting off, the biggest barrier is just getting over your fear of shooting street photography. And I think the barrier of that is that you assume that everyone's going to get really pissed off if you take their photograph. And this is a natural human thing too, is that we're all afraid of strangers. We
Yeah.
don't like confrontation. And so I think most people before they start street photography, they think the world's kind of a scary place and that everyone's really mean. But I think once you start talking to strangers, it gives you the chance to realize, hey, that guy who looked like really scary, like the guy with the face tattoo,
Yeah.
totally looks scary. But you start talking to him, it's like the nicest guy ever. And it's like, he's got a face tattoo. It's like, everyone's scared of me. I don't know why. It's like, oh, maybe it's
Yeah.
because you have a face tattoo. But then, but no, but seriously, so like one of the assignments that I'll give is just in your daily life, even when you go to the grocery store or order a cup of coffee, just asking the person on the other side of the register, just how's your day going?
Yeah.
And it's something I personally try to do as well because especially when I'm having a pretty shitty day and you can tell the other person's kind of having a shitty day, and you just say like something like, how's your day going? And some people might just be, oh, fine, how are you, blah blah. But there's actually some people who are like, oh, actually X, Y, and Z. I'm so glad you asked, and they'll talk to you
Yeah.
for like 2 or 3 minutes, and that makes you feel good. That makes them feel good, and that positive energy just kind of continues to spiral forward.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, I think whenever you have the chance, try to talk to strangers as much as you can. Like if you're in an elevator, it could be the most awkward 10 seconds of your life.
Oh
Just
yeah.
asking person, how you doing or how's the weather? Chatting with them, asking the waiter, even asking the waiter their names. No one ever asks them their names. Like, what's your name?
Yeah.
And shaking people's hands. I think this is probably one of the best ways to build your confidence as a street photographer and just be a better human being.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Dude, thanks so much for having me, Julius. Keep up all the good work in the interviews, and yeah, keep me posted with everything else.
Yeah, definitely. Will do. Thanks so much for watching. This has been ISO 400. For more of Eric's work, head on over to erickimphotography.com, or if you'd like to check out the street photography blog, head on over to erickimphotography.com/blog. And for more of what we do, you can head on over to theblogger.com. All of those links are in the description down below. If you like what we do, please hit subscribe and share this with your friends. Thanks so much, and see you next week.